I'm Tim.
I'm Chris.
Sarah!
I'm Corinne.
As Christmas approaches, it's time to remember the really important things. Helicopters roasting on an open fire, glass shards cutting up your toes. It's in this spirit that we decide to watch that Yuletide classic, Die Hard.
It's Christmas Eve in L.A. But a team of terrorists...
You want money? What kind of terrorists are you? Who said we were terrorists?
...have their own holiday plans.
And I'm telling you, you're just gonna have to kill me. Okay. We do it the hard way.
But the one thing they didn't plan on was New York cop John McClane.
Got invited to the Christmas party by mistake. Who knew?
They have already killed one hostage.
This channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
Lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
What does he think he's doing?
Good job.
They're using artillery on us.
You idiot. It's not the police. It's him.
Bruce Willis. Die Hard.
It's Christmas in L.A., and New York cop John McClane has flown across the country to attempt to reconcile with his estranged wife Holly, an executive with Nakatomi, a Japanese firm. But before they can leave her office Christmas party, a team of terrorists, led by the charismatic Hans Gruber, seizes the nearly empty building and rounds up the remaining employees, including Holly, as hostages. With neither the LAPD nor the FBI able to resolve the standoff, it falls to McClane to take on the intruders. How did everybody encounter this movie for the first time?
I was 4 when this movie was made, and I probably didn't see it too far after that. It's just awesome. This is quintessential action movie from your childhood kind of thing. I remembered the second one coming out, and then the third one, which is actually my favorite. And our parents would rent them and watch them, and then we get to stay up and eat pizza and watch the movies. And this was one of my first introductions to that. Not much more you can say. Great villain, great hero, all around just fucking fantastic movie. So, sorry?
You and I started watching it in school when we were in college one night, didn't we?
That was your first encounter.
I think I fell asleep.
Yeah.
I have no idea when I saw it for the first time, but it's kind of like cultural osmosis.
I think everybody knows the character.
I've seen it so many times, but I have no idea when it started, why.
I remember when I was a kid going to some movie and seeing the trailer, which struck me as odd because it was like a PG movie, but a very R-rated movie trailer, and just think, oh my God, it looked amazing. You know, things blowing up and everything exploding, and of course I couldn't see it because it was R and nobody would take me to it. But years later, when it came on video, the whole family crowded around to watching it, all of us just loving it. And it's, like you said, it's kind of absorbed into popular culture. You just say a line from it, everybody in my family knows what you're talking about. The movie was released on July 15th, 1988, filmed for a budget of $28 million, which in those dollars was quite a bit, and it certainly looks like it. It's all up on the screen. Grossed $140.7 million, huge hit for the time. Based on the novel Nothing Lasts Forever by Roderick Thorpe, which was published in 1979 as a sequel to the novel The Detective. I've read the book. The movie is much better.
Good to hear.
Let's jump right into the cast and characters. First of all, of course, Bruce Willis as John McClane. This is...
Bubbling badass.
Yeah, it's been said over and over again, but this is one of the first. Or was this his big first action?
Yeah, his first action film. Before this, he'd just been mostly known for moonlighting,
right?
Comedic acting.
So, thing that always strikes me, and it spans across all 3 Die Hard movies and the other 2 that we won't talk about, and a lot of his other characters that he plays in other movies, he's the everyman. And, you know, you get some other people playing the everyman, you get your Tom Cruises and other people, they're untouchable, you know, in the movies that they're in. And the thing that's great about Die Hard is they beat the living fuck out of him. You know, he's bleeding profusely at the end of this one and pretty much at the end of every movie. And the fact that normal things can... He's not untouchable. He's not a Superman. You know what I mean? He's just an everyday guy hoping that he makes his way through it. And that's what I've always liked about it. You know, the movie, one of my favorite things with McClane's character is they're intent on showing his process for figuring stuff out. Trial and error. It's not just everything he comes up with is brilliant and it works. He obviously doesn't really know what the fuck's going to happen with the C4 when he drives it down the elevator shaft. He's counting off the guys on his arm, you know, writing it. That's all very clever, but very lo-fi, you know, type stuff. And I've always liked that about the character across the course of all
How
of
was
these.
he the everyman?
How's he the everyman? He's a blue-collar working-class cop. It's not like he's,
Yeah, but not every man could be in those situations to get the crap beat out of him and still be alive and walking.
Also true, but he's not... He doesn't walk out at the end with his hair perfect and without a scratch on him. Like, things that hurt.
He's not James Bond. I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a cakewalk for him. And that's James Bond would, be screwing a couple girls on the way through the Nakatomi building.
Walk out with a martini.
Walk out with a martini, right? So
I'd even argue, besides being an everyman, he's specifically an every American man.
Yeah.
Good point.
Absolutely not a worldly man at all.
No, and that's
very specific
exactly.
to the U.S. and New York City.
Oh, yeah. New York City.
And they play up the fish out of water,
Yeah.
only not just the fact that he's in L.A., but he's in this really rich
And he
office
hates
building. Yeah, that it's really not his environment. He looks incredibly uncomfortable while he's navigating his way through the party. And that, again, makes him a little bit more the underdog.
Sarah, outside of this movie, what are you used to seeing Bruce Willis? I know you've seen him in a bunch
I
of stuff.
saw him in the Die Hard with the fire sale.
Yeah.
The guy when he's the hostage, the negotiator.
No, the hostage.
Was it hostage?
Yep. Yeah.
The Sixth Sense. Has he been in a couple kiddish movies?
He was in The Kid, that Disney one.
Yep, that was actually great.
He's been in a bunch of
North, not so great.
Not so great, no.
Oh, come on, it had Reba in it.
No, North, no good.
When the movie was originally going to be a sequel to Detective, contractually they had to offer it to Frank Sinatra, who played the character in the actual film version of the Detective. By that point, he was old enough that he turned it down, but some of the people they offered it to, originally they were going to rewrite it to be a sequel to Commando, and it was going to be the John Matrix character, Schwarzenegger's character. After Schwarzenegger passed on, they offered it to the usual names, Harrison Ford, Sylvester Stallone, Richard Gere, Don Johnson, because he was a name at that point.
It's kind of interesting you say that, because then basically every movie Bruce Willis has been a star vehicle for has started out as a Die Hard script.
It's kind of like when Nicolas Cage was in The Rock. The kind of appeal was, it's Nicolas Cage in an action movie, that's weird, and now Nicolas Cage is an action hero. It was kind of the same thing to put Bruce Willis in this movie. And
having Schwarzenegger in this film would have changed it completely.
Right.
Yeah.
As, Bruce Willis is playing the every American man. Schwarzenegger changes it into an international film.
It just wouldn't have
immediately.
worked.
Too many German accents.
Too many, and he would have looked like he could hold his own in the fights.
Yeah.
And the whole point of Willis is that he basically is fucked every fist fight he gets into in this movie, right? And it's a battle of wits, and he wins by being a little bit more clever or lucky.
Because the movie wants him to.
Well, also true.
I also like that they humanize him by emphasizing a lot of his flaws. The fact that has been kind of a shitty husband at this point to his wife. Even to the opening scene where we see him terrified at the airplane. I mean, that's not usually how you introduce an action hero. And then the little things like him not having his shoes. It's a weird little detail, but...
Well, it's a handicap.
Yeah, over the course of the movie, you just sympathize every time he has to run over something uncomfortable.
Yeah, the glass. Oh, the fucking glass.
And like you were saying about how he puts things together, you can see a lot of the police street smarts. Like, when he first escapes and he's running up the floors, he's opening each door and taking inventory. Okay, that's the computer room, that one's under construction, keeping it in mind for later. Or even when he walks in and his eyes, we see him taking in the security cameras, the security guard, looking over the place, just like kind of cop instincts whenever he walks into a room.
It was almost like a MacGyver, like a badass MacGyver, just using what he can find.
Next we have Bonnie Bedelia as Holly Gennaro, or Holly McClane, depending on which scene of the movie you're watching. She debuted in The Gypsy Moths and popped up in They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, Heart Like a Wheel, the TV version of Salem's Lot from the 1970s, and would go on to appear in Presumed Innocent, Speechless, Needful Things, and that TV show Parenthood. I think she's still on there, actually. And supposedly she got the role because Willis recommended her for it.
So, a good segue from us talking about Bruce Willis being the every American and then being introduced by being a weak hero, if you will, a hero with humanly flaws. You've got the wife character that is really set up from a story standpoint as a damsel in distress, but the character isn't that at all. We're first introduced to her as she's in this company because she's a fucking badass, and she fought her way there. And even the guy that is basically trying to get in her pants, and Bruce Willis calls her on it, it's like, no, she's just schmoozing with him so she can get his office. I like that she can fucking hold her own. And, I mean, she walks in there with Gruber to basically ask for things. You could just shoot her right in the face, you know what I mean? But she knows that she can carry herself in that way.
I have a request.
What idiot put you in charge?
You did. When you murdered my boss. Now everybody's looking to me. Personally, I'd pass on the job. I don't enjoy being this close to you.
Well, she's
Type
the
of
ideal
character.
of the 80s
Correct.
female. She has the high-flying career. She has children. I mean, she has problems with her husband, but we know those will be rectified by the end of the movie. Plus, she is still sexy. She still has attraction from other people, and it's just street smart. So she has it all as a character, and I don't think she became a damsel until Hans just kidnaps her, like
Correct.
outright kidnaps her once she's been outed as John's wife.
And even then, she's still throwing things at him, like when she says, "You're nothing more than a common thief," in the end. She still will stand up to him. The only time she even screams is when he yanks her out the window in the very last scene.
She stands up to him, but that part felt it felt foolish, and she hadn't made a foolish step until that moment. It was very reckless.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And
it was like she was reaching for something to say or do to kind of be like, "I'm not scared of you," you know what I mean?
And I don't know if anybody noticed this besides me, but her shirt was pretty low cut to begin with, which is not quite what an 80s businesswoman would have. But on top of that, when she got kidnapped, a couple of her buttons were undone.
I did notice that. I did notice that too.
So there's more sexualization because she's
but who knows
the
if that
victim.
just happened when he grabbed her, or if he did it, she
Oh,
did
it's
it.
intentional.
It's totally
I'm sure it's
intentional.
It's intentional.
But I also like that the movie, around this time, you'd almost expect it might cast her ambition in her career in a bad light, but it never does. I mean, it actually validates it with McClane coming around and appreciating that he should have supported her way back when.
Well, you can see too that when we start the movie, McClane's in a really low position. He's out of he's out of New York. He's on the outs with his wife, so he's at a really low position, and she's really high. She's successful. She knows the turf, and you can see it kind of equaling toward the middle of the movie, and toward the end, of course, we've got her in the victim position, and he's the hero. So there's a really nice power shift.
But then it all ties up with his acceptance of her
Yeah.
in that role, and out of very little actual dialogue, even. They do a lot with those two characters, just with their progression through the movie. It's awesome.
It makes a lot more sense when he finally says, "I've learned a lot, I get it, and I'm sorry."
I told her it took me a while to figure out what a jerk I've been. But, that when things started to pan out for her, I should have been more supportive, and I just should have been behind her more. Oh, shit. Tell her that she's the best thing that ever happened to a bum like me.
Because he has learned through this entire night that his wife is equipped and that he can have a life beside hers. He can walk along with her rather than she needs to stay put where he is because he's the man.
I also like the subtle relationship it gives her with her boss, Takagi, that we see she's protective of him in the scene where Gruber's looking for him. She just puts that hand on his shoulder. You almost get the sense that kind of steely demeanor she has is he kind of served as the role model for her. He's a boss that she really respects and vice versa. We see that he definitely respects her and her contribution to the company.
And I like that it helps validate her position with the company more, too. The company isn't bad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you first see terrorists coming in, taking over, a movie, especially nowadays, would kind of give, a little bit of validation of them being there. Oh, they murdered a bunch of people in his village or whatever. This is like, no, he literally just is a pretty high end, but he's just a fucking criminal. Mm-hmm. That's all he wants. He just picked the company because he probably read about them in Forbes. You know what I mean? And the movie doesn't paint Takashi and Nakatomi as all in a bad light, which a lot of the times nowadays they would try to do.
Yeah, that's interesting when we get to the book, because that's actually a big subplot in the original novel.
We don't even really know what the Nakatomi company is doing. We have no idea what business they're in.
They're just
They might be in trades. They might build things. We have no idea.
Yeah, I still think it has something to do with oil or energy based on the models that we see, the oil rigs and stuff. Even the one of the highway, there's a lot of oil tankers around it.
Although it's kind of important at this point to also note that it's a foreign company and they've got bearer bonds.
So there might be some illegal things going on.
Next, we come to Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber.
By Grabthar's hammer. What an accent.
There'll be no incantations or wave warning in this class. Silly incantations or wave warning in my class.
As you were mentioning earlier, this was his first movie. It's hard to believe it. I mean, he just knows how to hold the screen the moment he walks into the film out of that truck.
He had a stage history, but they don't always translate.
Yeah, definitely not. Actually, it was a performance of Dangerous Liaisons that Joel Silver, the producer, and John McTiernan, the director, saw him in, and immediately went, we need this guy. This guy would be the perfect villain.
He's just awesome. I love his entire trying to fake an American accent bit, and every time McClane isn't looking at him, he just has this look of, I'm actually fucking pulling this off on his face. The facial expressions of this character, I mean, not alone that Alan Rickman is just the fucking man, and every scene he's in is awesome. You know, you get a lot of subtlety added to a villain that should have been one note. Like, this is every movie's one-note villain. You know what I mean? And even the one-note sidekicks to the villain, because of how good he is, asking questions like, you know, he shot your brother. You know, there's emotion from him, and it's just awesome.
I like the little silent moments of communication he has with others. There's a great moment when Ellis walks in the office, and we see Carl just kind of reach toward his gun and give Hans a look like, should I? And Hans just gives him the little, no, not yet. Just a tiny little shake of his head. That he has that kind of simpatico with all these guys. He doesn't even have to speak, and they know what to do. You
didn't even recognize him. Like, he doesn't look anything like he does now.
Yeah, it's funny. He actually looks older with the little streaks of gray that they put in his hair and beard, too. But I'm not sure how old he was when they filmed this. Of course, after this, he'd go on to play a whole bunch of villains, including the Sheriff of Nottingham and Robin Hood. And
so good.
And now, he's hated by children everywhere for playing Snape in the Harry Potter movies. And I loved him in Sense and Sensibility, where he plays Colonel Brandon. We get to see the more sensitive side.
The depressed robot and whatever.
Yes,
oh, that's right. The voice for Marvin in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Suckfest.
He was in a wonderful HBO movie about two doctors, one who is the surgeon and his quote-unquote assistant, who actually became a brilliant surgeon.
I remember the movie.
The name is escaping me.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about. I never actually got to see it.
Brilliant film, and it was, I think, the first real dramatic role I'd seen him in, which, of course, made me a fan.
That's awesome.
I just hunted out everything else Rickman had been in.
He adds a lot of great little, like you were talking about the way he looks at things, the little looks of annoyance he gives at people every once in a while. Like when the two of them have their bet about whether Takagi's going to break around into questioning, he just kind of silences them with this very subtle little look to the left, like, I'm trying to be serious here. And
I love the look during the entire sequence where the coked out worker there is in there completely feeding him a load of shit and thinks he is just, you know. Actually, Rickman gets the same thing from Willis later on, where he's fucking bluffing over the thing, and he, as soon as he starts talking, knows that it's just complete bullshit. I am so annoyed by this American prick. Is the look he has on his face.
Did anyone else notice the notebook that he constantly has?
Yeah.
I've always wondered what that was. Like, he opens it up when he first has his little speech, but every once in a while you see him scribbling in it. So I was like, is it a schedule for the heist? Is it a journal? Is he getting ready to keep a record of this amazing heist that he's going to pull off?
He was so meticulous, I think it may have been a checklist.
That could be. It would make sense.
When he walks in, it's almost like he had the initial speech written.
Yeah.
But when he walks in the door and...
But then he kind of closes it and just goes on and improvises. But again, it's a nice, tiny little character touch in there. Also, you might notice that whenever he has to fire a gun, Rickman really did not like guns. And every once in a while you can see him flinch when he has to actually pull the trigger. Especially when he kills Takagi, they had to cut away really quick as soon as he pulls the trigger.
Still my favorite Rickman role, the Metatron.
I forgot about that, too. Yeah.
Just have to mention it.
Next is Reginald Vell Johnson as Carl... As
Carl Winslow.
Carl.
He's made a career playing cops, but now he's always going to be Carl Winslow. But though, between facing terrorists and Urkel, I think I'd rather take the terrorists. He'd play a cop again in Turner and Hooch and pop up again in Die Hard 2 for about 2 minutes.
Yeah, fan service.
As the same character, yeah.
I love his career as a cop player, playing cops.
Cops, guards. He was a prison guard in Ghostbusters. I remember he had like one line.
Yep.
And the limo driver from Crocodile Dundee. Who
That's
throws
right.
boomerang antenna thing there. I guess because of the Twinkies from this movie, whenever fans would like see him on the street, they would like give him Twinkies or throw them in his
Yellow
car.
number 5.
What? Sure,
that guy.
Well, sure, they were for his wife, right? Sure.
Hey!
Well, earlier in the movie, we see him. He's supposedly on his way home.
He's
Al
cleaning out the.
He got a whole bunch of snacks, and I think there were Twinkies involved.
They were all Twinkies, yeah, which he claimed was for the wife, but.
So, since we're talking about Carl Winslow, we can talk about the inappropriate butt-fucking juxtaposition that we were all noticing throughout the movie. When he was on the radio with Bruce Willis, let's see. He mentions that the FBI got ass-raped in front of national television, to which in the next scene he asks him, we'll make it a date. We're going to nail his ass. Both our asses if you're wrong. Just watch your ass and you'll make it out alive. I'm going to get behind you on this one. Yeah, they just keep going. I wrote them all down.
And all the loving looks in the last scene.
Yeah, all the loving look.
It's a double bromance.
It's great.
Love at first sight.
Bruce Willis and his wife just made up, but the score doesn't kick up for that. The score kicks up for when him and Carl Winslow first look at each other for the first time and they hug. And, oh, it's wonderful.
And Holly looks confused, obviously, because she doesn't know they've been talking, but it takes on a different context in that scene, like, hey, what's going on with these two guys? I like that immediately you sense why McClane would like this guy. He's this humble, unpretentious desk sergeant guy.
Well,
he's the lower rank.
Has the same street smarts as him.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, he's in every cop.
And we see that he's willing to talk back to the deputy chief. He's not worried about his career. He's much worried about handling the situation correctly.
The man is hurting. He is alone, tired, and he hasn't seen diddly squat from anybody down here. Now you're going to stand there and tell me that he's going to give a damn about what you do to him if he makes it out of there alive? Why don't you wake up and smell what you shoveling?
You listen to me, Sergeant. Anytime you want to go home, you consider yourself dismissed.
No, sir. You couldn't drag me away.
There's something, since you mentioned the Deputy Police Chief Dwayne T. Robinson, every single authority figure in this film has been undermined or just shown to be just very, very stupid or inefficient. There's something really wrong with these people. It's always an underling who saves the day or has the right idea. You saw it with the electrician, with the cops, and of course with John.
Electrician.
Yeah, the electrician that he wants to shut off the grid.
Oh,
he's like, I can just do it.
Yeah. And his supervisor's like, no, we need to go downtown. But I can do it right here. And there's really... That scene is throwaway. You wouldn't even need it.
That is a good point. It kind of goes to that, but sort of the working class people in the movie are the ones that McClane kind of gravitates toward.
Right.
Argyle, the limo driver, Powell. Even like we see the security guard when he walks in, the way he kind of gives him that little nod of respect as he's walking by. Actually, so why don't we just jump to Paul Gleason as Dwayne Robinson, who everybody's going to know as Principal Vernon from The Breakfast Club, which has pretty much marked him for the rest of his career as just the asshole that everyone
he just plays a douche. Really, really well.
He's great at it. And he played kind of similar characters in Trading Places, where he's Clarence Beeks, and Miami Blues as well. He's one of those characters who he's a foil, but he's kind of necessary. I like that in the movie McClane is willing to just sit back and let the LAPD take care of it, except for the fact that this guy keeps screwing the situation up even worse, and McClane actually has to act as a result. I also like that he's much more focused on how he looks than anything
Would you like
else.
a breath mint when the FBI shows up?
As soon as the TV crew shows up, you're like, oh shit, he doesn't want to pop up on camera. And even to the point where he wants to kind of make McClane the scapegoat for what happened to Ellis immediately.
Right.
That's his first impulse.
That's like pulling the trigger
Christ,
yourself.
man, can't you see what's happening? Can't
That's
you
cold.
read between the lines?
It's on the right channel?
Yes, sir. He did everything he could to save him. If he gave himself up, they'd both be dead right now.
No way, man, no way. They'd be talking to us. Listen, you tell this partner of yours, pal, to stay the hell out of this from now on. Do you hear me? Because if he doesn't, I'm going to nail him, boy. I'm really going to nail his ass now.
Or, the bomb blows up the lower half of the building. He's not focused on the cops they were trying to get out of there. He's like, they're covered in glass. They destroyed a building. Let's see. There's also Alexander Godunov as Carl. Doesn't have a lot of dialogue, but in terms of physical acting, he is superb in this.
Yeah.
He was a Soviet ballet dancer who defected to the U.S. in 1979.
Soviet ballet dancer.
But if you watch the movie, you can see it with the way he moves, especially that scene where he's stalking across the roof trying to trap McClane. He's very graceful. The fight scene, same thing. He also popped up in Witness and The Money Pit. After this, he didn't take as many roles because all he was offered was either German bad guys or dance roles. And unfortunately died from hepatitis in 1995.
Oh,
but
that's a downer.
I like how we also see an arc even with him at the beginning of the movie. He seems kind of playful, the little relationship he has with his brother where he's messing up.
But by the end, he's fucking Michael Myers.
Yeah, as soon as his brother's gone, that's it. He doesn't care about the heist. He doesn't care about the money. He just wants McClane.
The playing around in the beginning is telegraphing that something bad is going to happen to one of them, and then there's going to be some bloody revenge.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah.
And again, it goes to that little moment he has with Theo where they're betting over whether Takagi's going to give up the safe code. I love those tiny little moments they give the characters to flesh them out a little bit.
Which movies after this don't even try.
Not really, no. Continuing the sleazebag portion of the cast, there's William Atherton as Richard Thornburg. Another one of those faces from the 80s that movie fans just knew to hate after Ghostbusters and Real Genius, where he's the evil scientist. Supposedly, he actually was so infamous for those roles, people on the street would start yelling at him out of nowhere because they recognized him as Walter Peck or Jerry Hathaway.
Walter Peck. It's true, this man has no dick.
He was also really good. You ever see the Sugarland Express?
Yeah.
The Steven Spielberg movie? He's great in that. And one of the rare times he gets to play a sympathetic character. But again, a complete self-serving jerk who gets everybody into trouble when he has to put the kids on camera just to get higher ratings.
Well, we mentioned when we were watching a scene you'd never have in a movie nowadays where he uses the fact that he's just going to assume that a Mexican woman in this person's house is an illegal alien.
All right.
Look, you let me in right now or I call the INS. Comprende? Look, this is the last time these kids are going to have to speak to their parents.
And that threatening tone that he gives that line.
Yeah.
Ugh. And completing the asshole trifecta is Hart Bochner as Harry Ellis. He popped up in Breaking Away, Terror Train, Supergirl, and played a very similar character in Mr. Destiny. He is the ultimate 80s yuppie asshole. The shoulder pad suit, the cocaine every time he has a chance to sniff something.
He's probably just doing that. I know what I can bring to the role. Fine, do the cocaine if you want.
Well, supposedly he did add when he was talking to Hans, calling him Bubby, and Alan Rickman's kind of confused reaction was something he improvised in the moment. Another interesting, weird detail, his father was Lloyd Bochner, who appeared in The Detective with Frank Sinatra, the original movie from the book series.
Was he playing a douchey cokehead in that?
I'm not sure. Maybe it runs in the family. And that brings us to director John McTiernan, who, boy, in the 80s, this guy was kind of the top of action movie directors. Predator, Hunt for October, he'd do Flight of the Intruder, Medicine Man, the Thomas Crown Affair remake, 13th Warrior. After that, it gets to the Rollerball remake and Basic, so not quite up to
I didn't mind. Basic was a lot better than the Rollerball remake, but Basic was so cheap.
A Cinder Block to the Head was better than the Rollerball remake.
In between the two was The Last Action Hero.
Oh, I always forget about that one.
The movie I hate to love and love to hate.
Yes.
What?
He goes from having amazing movies to this in-between kind of love it but hate it film with The Last Action Hero to just really bad movies now.
Yeah. McTiernan had more bad luck. He was involved in that whole scandal with Anthony Pellicano, the crime detective who was wiretapping everybody. Ended up doing a year in prison.
Yep.
But he's back out now. I keep hoping he'll get the career back on track because he was an amazing director.
Well, they kept threatening he'd come back for the Die Hard sequels, and it never happened.
I wish they had, though.
He
didn't do any of them?
He did the second and third, which were really good.
He did the third, not the second.
Yeah, and that was Rennie Harlan. The second, which still holds its own.
How many are there entirely?
5.
Holy crap. Are they going to make it anymore?
They keep talking about it, yeah. Supposedly after the last one, they had signed Bruce Willis to another one.
That last one is garbage.
I was wondering if they can beat him up. He's getting old.
Exactly.
Eventually, he'll be in a wheelchair. They'll be pulling out...
Get off my lawn!
Die Hard, number 10.
Yippee brother!
The Nakatomi wheelchair ramp is the longest wheelchair ramp in the country. And there's terrorists on the top. Anyway, sorry.
I like a lot of the visual storytelling he does in this movie. Like the scene with Holly in her office talking to her kids, and we find out who Bruce Willis is just from the pictures in the background. Nobody says it. We just see that, immediately know who he is. Or, again, Bruce Willis walking through the lobby, and we see his point of view of how he's picking out all these details. Little things like that.
And aside from the beating you over the head with the fact that it's Christmas all the time, the clever ways the movie has to do character development and introduction, you learn all about the head of the Nakatomi company through Hans Gruber's looking for him in the crowd. But that helps understand that. Like, he tells you everything about him, aside from what his company does. But,
Or the way that scene is filmed, where we see Takagi's point of view of all the other terrorists circling around and closing in around the crowd.
Right. It's really good.
Or I was thinking the way he cross-cut scenes, too. Like when the police are gearing up for their assault on the building, we're cutting to Argyle in the garage trying to find a way out. Terrorists, setting up their missile launchers and getting ready for the assault on the ground floor.
Progresses time like a comic book.
Yeah.
And I like that.
But that cross-cutting just keeps amping up the suspense. Or again later on where they're getting ready to blow up the roof. McClane is fighting Carl. Gruber has grabbed Holly and has her in the vault. That cross-cutting, and you're constantly moving from plot line to plot line, just keeps you completely involved in the scenes. Next is the screenwriters, Jeb Stewart and Stephen E. D'Souza. Stewart would write the screenplay for The Fugitive, Just Cause, and would direct Switchback with Dennis Quaid.
Yep.
And D'Souza wrote 48 Hours, Commando, which makes sense when they were going to turn this into the sequel to that. The Running Man, helped write Die Hard 2, Judge Dredd, and he wrote and directed Street Fighter.
Oh, whoops. It levitates me!
It's funny how many of the people involved in this movie are pretty much typecast. Like, this is the thing they do, this is the thing they do well, and we're going to hire them to do that one thing.
Yeah.
You're saying the screenwriter, and you've got Al Powell, a.k.a. Carl, and Hans Gruber, which, I mean, even in Dangerous Liaisons, he plays pretty much a villain.
Even to Bruce Willis, being seen as an action hero from then on.
Yeah.
Right.
And Goodenough not wanting to take villain roles after this. Yeah, this was kind of a trendsetter for everybody.
And the Man Against Unspeakable Odds film kind of wasn't the first one, but this was the by which all others will be judged and ripped off.
Oh, definitely. It's funny, for a movie that feels like it has such a great screenplay, a lot of it was kind of rewritten and improvised as they were going, which explains that big flub where they get out of the truck and it's empty, and yet at the end they're able to pull an ambulance out of it to make their escape. That wasn't really counted on when they were filming the earlier scene. It was something they came up with while they were shooting. And supposedly the confrontation with Hans and McClane, where they actually meet face-to-face, was made up after they realized that Alan Rickman could actually do an American accent. They decided it was time to put those two characters together.
Such a great scene.
It is.
That's actually on my favorite scenes.
Me too. I can't imagine the film without that scene.
Was the scene where Argyle has this one moment of punching the other guy out, was that also...
Yeah, I think it would have to be if the ambulance wasn't in there. If not improvised, written while they were in the middle of making the movie. They might have realized that Argyle really didn't get much to do and wanted one little beat of action.
I feel like his character was just comedy relief, and then, oh wait, we have to have him do something.
Yeah.
I know, let's have him punch the other black guy. There were some really bad racial problems in this movie, but I tend to look for that kind of thing.
Oh no, they're blatant.
They were really bad. They were really, really bad. With the maid who is Hispanic and supposedly she is an illegal, with just about every African-American character being bad or incompetent or just there for
But then you got Carl Winslow, who, when you first see him, he's the incompetent cop, but he ends up being the only one that's as good as McClane.
Yeah.
And certainly smart enough to appreciate the situation.
Yeah.
I did have that problem when reading, when reading the movie from a racial point of view. His character didn't make sense to me because, he was basically there as moral support. I'm Carl, I'm moral support, I got you, buddy. Even though in the beginning he'd been very bumbling, we find out later that he shot a child. So up until his association with John McClane, he was just a fool.
Right.
So it doesn't make much sense to me as to, his character development there. Oh, yes, I can do this kind of thing. Doesn't make sense.
Well, maybe it's through his helping, because his, I wouldn't say idiocy, but his mistake, bad mistake, he almost seemed just uncomfortable even to be in the police car.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? When he was driving home and helping McClane actually solve something, and his intuitions were coming back to him during that. It gave him his confidence back.
Okay, that makes more sense as a character arc.
Because if you get his boss, the LAPD guy, was continuing on that you're nothing better than an office clerk, you know what I mean? And he would try, and then, okay, no, I gotta step down. Try again. Oh, no, I gotta step. And then when McClane finally gets the buy-in of the FBI. Now it's, yeah, my guy's up there, and yeah, I knew it the whole time, and I told him, and then he's able to come out there with the gun and pull the trigger again, which in retrospect isn't necessarily the best vindication, but he looks genuinely bittersweet. Like, the emotion that he has isn't, yeah, it's kind of like a, oh yeah, I remember what that feels like, and I don't like it, you know?
If he was a desk jockey, why did he have a cruiser?
Or a gun, for that matter.
Well, even uniformed cops who are desk jockeys, if their uniform, have a gun. That just kind of goes with it.
Didn't know that.
But I also almost think he serves as kind of an alternate depiction of masculinity in the movie. I mean, you have John McClane who runs around shirt off shooting people, but we also have this guy who doesn't like violence, who does not like shooting people, who's still a strong character and has kind of the right idea of the situation.
Do you want to call it masculinity, or maybe just another side of a policeman?
I guess you could look at it that way too.
Yeah.
This is the competency versus the incompetent of the rest of the police force.
Exactly. I mean, you don't have to be a guy who runs around with machine guns blowing things up to necessarily be a good cop.
And you don't have to look good on camera. Right, or anything. Yeah, exactly. You're not there for the flair of it.
The other thing of the screenplay, like we were talking about, all the characters, even a lot of the, unnamed characters, have great tiny little character bits that just make it feel a little bit more like the real world. My favorite being Al Leong with the candy bar.
Yes.
He is waiting for
That's
the
another one of my favorite
And he's
scenes.
just sitting there like, he looks around to make sure nobody's looking, he grabs a little Nestle scratch.
What's great about that scene, the whole of that scene is staged, because they're all flurrying down to basically get ready to kill the onslaught of FBI agents that come in. And he's piling and piling and piling bullets on the table. He's got his gun. All right, I'm ready. Oh. How about a Snickers bar? You know what I mean?
When the cops are coming in, he's in mid-bite like, here we go.
I gotta shoot some people.
I missed that.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Or the SWAT team as they're moving up for the assault and run into the thorn bushes like, oh, hey.
Yeah. See, that was another moment. It was like one of the only black policemen we see who bumbles into a rose bush.
Whoops.
Again.
I got the sense that was more kind of a condemnation of the whole cops and the whole masculine kind of, let's go, save the day.
I'm sure, but it's still...
Some producers in the background going, make sure he's the one that gets caught.
Yeah. When I think of that, I don't think of the black cop being the one to be bubbling. I don't think that's...
In that particular scene, neither did I, to be honest with you. But I just thought it was more a general thing for all the cops.
If you're going to be racist with a black cop, that wouldn't be the direction I would think to go.
Well, it's again played for comedic relief.
Yes, that's more. It's they're the person dancing around for our entertainment.
Right. And there were so few African American cops and even actors in this film.
Even though it's L.A.?
Yeah. That it would actually make more sense to have just a bunch of background actors be African American and say, this one random white guy is going to stumble into a rose bush and he can take a laugh. But pretty much none of the white guys take a laugh.
But they're all idiots.
They're all idiots. Every single one of them. But when it comes down to such a small number of black characters and even Asian characters, one Hispanic character, and they're all played for comedy relief at some point.
I would say Takagi is. I don't think he's ever played for comic relief.
He sort of was a little bit in the beginning.
But the maid
he asks him, do they celebrate Christmas in Japan?
Yeah. Well, but immediately he throws a joke back at it. It's like, Pearl Harbor didn't work out, so we got you with tape decks instead.
I like that.
Yeah, but that's more like a jab back. I don't know.
See, that's why I think, because, McClane throws not really a jab, it's more just an actual question, and he's ready back with a playful jab at it.
Almost like I'm used to the way this American business goes, and I'm used to hearing this bullshit.
But that's the thing. Like, I'm used to this American bullshit.
Well, even then, I don't know if asking if they celebrate Christmas in Japan is really a nasty or bullshit question.
Do you remember the scene in Better Off Dead? Do they celebrate Christmas in France? Say it, Christmas.
Say it, Frenchie, chowder. Say it.
Basically, yeah. So it plays the same way.
Although the film's depiction, even though he ends up being one of the villains and gets punched by Argyle, the villain's heavy from a technological standpoint, which would lead one to believe the most educated of all of the people on the villain side happens to be the African American, with almost no comic relief aside from getting punched in the face at the end of the movie.
Well, his comic relief is mostly funny lines, but we also see he's probably the most
he's
competent
the most competent guy to have there.
He does exactly what he's supposed to. It's everybody else who screws it up.
And I wouldn't say this film fails on every single front.
No, it's
but
the
that's
80s,
important
especially
to
the
notice.
mid to late 80s action film was plagued with racial stereotypes up the wazoo.
Yeah.
But this one, with a lot of other ones, depict the white, powerful people always as being the idiots. That was a big part of all of these movies. You know, even you got Rambo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that's the John McClane character, right? The against all odds guy is the one that's going to be able to figure everything out, and all the generals and everyone are all the people that are wrong.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, the only competent cops we see in the movie are McClane and Powell.
That's it.
The SWAT team leader's an idiot. Robinson's an idiot. The FBI guys, one white, one black, both idiots.
Johnson and Johnson.
Johnson.
No relation.
But
no relation. That is a great gag.
It's a gag because
I was in high school, you dickhead.
Well, also, unless we're not going to go in this direction, but talking about the racialness, the topical coinciding with the cops, with what's going on in.
I had written down a lot of those.
That's true. Yeah, when Powell talks about shooting a kid with a gun, or what he
Right.
thought was a gun, it turned out to be a toy gun.
Right.
And then also, when McClane's talking to, I forget what character it was, and he's saying, yeah, they told me that, you always told me not to be, that a cop's there not to hurt people.
Oh,
yeah,
it's the,
right.
The
no,
first,
towards the beginning.
It's the
What
first
did he
terrorist
say?
thing
I wrote it down.
yeah. There are rules for policemen.
Yeah, that's what my captain
Blonde
keeps
dick
telling
with
me.
handgun. That's what I wrote down. Blonde dick with handgun.
Blonde dick with hay. There's a lot of those. I mean, to get into the topical stuff that this movie, product of the 80s, right?
Terrorism.
Terrorism is just blatantly terrorism. Everything terrorism.
Although it turns out it's not really terrorism, as we find out. But
no
But they're
cell
foreign.
phones, so
It's
cutting
terrorism.
the phone lines is the easy way to get communication out.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's a plot point to have John McClane introduced as a police officer by it being okay for him to have a gun on him in a plane, but not everybody freaks out. Smoking cigarettes on a plane and in an airport. As Sarah said, the cop shooting a little kid for having a toy gun.
Driving a cargo truck right into a building after Oklahoma City, it's like...
Right.
Yeah. Or offering a pregnant lady a drink.
Yeah. That's
or saying it's okay.
Something about the kid coming out of bartender is like, has this woman had so much to drink
speaking of
that this kid's going to be a bartender, or the baby has
Like you were
been
saying
in there
about,
so long?
The driving the car into the building at the end when the guy's falling out of the building and then the papers kind of had a 9/11.
That's
Yeah.
a good point.
Yeah, I had an inappropriate comment that I didn't make. I didn't know Bruce Willis was in World Trade Center. I wasn't going to do it. I'll do it on
that's
the
another
podcast
scene you couldn't do today.
Yeah, or you could do it. But
I mean,
you'd be
granted, he fell and he didn't jump, and the papers were.
But just the visual
Nolan
iconography
uses
of that.
that imagery in.
But again, that was way before
all the Batman
that
movies
happened. Or,
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
all over the place, right?
Going back to the book, like I said, I think the screenplay adaptation ends up being a lot better. The book is a lot more mean-spirited. Like you were talking about about the company. In the book, it turns out the company, they're named Claxon Oil, actually helped ship weapons to this communist government to crush rebels so it could get a better oil contract, which is the main reason for the terrorists going in. It's not a heist. They actually are making a political point.
I like it so much better that it's frivolous. It's just, we found a company we could rip a bunch of money off from.
Well, McTiernan felt it would be much more fun for audiences if it was a heist that they could kind of have a little bit of fun with,
But when you break it down, it doesn't make sense. There's a bunch of foreigners who fly to America to take bonds from this company. How are they getting home undetected?
Well, also, they all have fake California licenses.
Well, could they have been in the United States for a while?
That's which would lead me to believe this might not be the first one of these they've pulled either.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm just saying, we have no idea whether or not they came from a country and are going right back, or if they came and moved here and have been here.
Like a sleeper cell kind of a dealie.
Yeah, but still, even then with sleeper cells, that thought is very modern. I mean, at the time.
Not even a sleeper
But they
cell,
also...
just...
A couple of their guys obviously weren't foreign. I'd say
I'd
say the lead tech guy
They had an
definitely
Asian.
wasn't.
Yeah. There was an Asian.
Yeah, which he might just be hired hand, right? Off and was Huey Lewis looking guy faking his accent, or was he really just like a Texan?
I think he really was supposed to be.
Yeah.
It was hard to tell. The accent was pretty bad either way.
Right. It was bad either way.
But also, I mean, since the whole big part of the plan was they were going to fake their deaths, they could take their time to get out of the country in a number.
Well,
of
that was the
ways.
plan. Yeah.
What else? There's also just the McClane character in the book, Leland. First of all, he knows who Hans Gruber is, or in the book he's Tony Gruber. Just through some random police briefing, he immediately knows who this guy is and all about terrorism, and he has this... It's kind of like, do you remember in Planet Terror, the Grindhouse thing, you had, what's his name, El Rey, who immediately, for no reason, knows this whole political situation that's going on and knows the bad guys? It was a lot like that.
But not played for laughs.
No, he was very much kind of a Gary Stu character. Everybody admires how, oh yeah, he's the good guy and everything like that. And there was a real sexist vibe to the Holly character, who in the book is actually his daughter named Stephanie. Rather than being this kind of positive depiction of this ambitious businesswoman, she's hooked up with Ellis, she's on drugs, she's kind of an accomplice in all the nasty stuff this company has done, and in the book gets killed as kind of punishment for it. She gets pulled out the window rather than actually having the watch taken off and saved. The book is just really dark and really unpleasant, and I'm very, very glad they changed the tone of it for the film. I don't think it would have worked otherwise.
Can we talk about some silly things that McClane does in the film?
Go for it.
Outright silly stuff. He mixes some metaphors like monkey and the wrench, monkey and the wrench, and during the first fight scene, he throws his gun away.
Yes, he does.
He's got this guy in an arm lock. And then he just tosses his gun away like he's never going to need it again in this fight.
Well, I thought it was knocked out of his hand. It looked like he was trying to throw his elbow into his neck.
No, he threw it.
And then the guy pushed him through it.
He threw that gun. Not going to need this.
I love and both do the same thing of, wow, this is so silly, but I guess if you got no way out, you got no way out. The gun strap duct sequence, when he uses the frickin' strap of that, everything about that is just, why would you even think to do this? But it's such a brilliantly tense. Well, he uses a gun with like the strap to go down a shaft.
Well, I love that it's an act of complete desperation.
Yes.
I assume he's out of bullets for that gun. He knows if he does not get out of that little elevator shaft area, he's about to get shot.
He's been out of bullets for that gun for a while, I bet, when he carries it around,
And interesting, that great moment where the strap finally breaks and he falls and just managed to grab on was an accident. He was supposed to actually reach out and grab that vent that he's reaching for, and the stuntman slipped, and if the shot had gone on for like 5 more seconds, we would have seen him fall through the painted bottom of the elevator shaft that they had there. But the editor loved the take. He just cut it a couple frames earlier, cut in him grabbing the other vent, and it worked perfectly. It was an extra little beat of suspense. I also like that at the end of the movie, the weapon that he uses to save the day is the one he starts with, just the service pistol. That's all he has in the end.
To speak of things that are, I won't necessarily say unique, but just tone of the movie wise, you said, things are set up to be a lot more fun. Mm-hmm. But in that fun, this movie, and I thought that I was just remembering it wrong, but going back and watching it again, I'm remembering wrong out of desensitization or whatever, but with everything going the PG-13 route, very few action movies nowadays, without them being outright horror or outright hard R's, have the type of, and it's weird to say this about an action movie, gore that this movie has. When Takagi gets shot in the head, that is like a freaking George Romero level blood squib, for brains getting... And it needs to be, because, it's the glass window in the room and everyone sees it from the outside. But you don't see that anymore in a movie that has such good bits of comic relief and levity. When someone gets shot, it looks fucking brutal. And when McClane gets hurt, it looks fucking brutal.
That shot where he fires through the glass and just shreds that guy's kneecaps. Yeah, that one always makes
another one of my favorite scenes. In slow motion.
Or, when he walks through the glass, that moment didn't get me as much as when he later tries to use his feet as leverage when he's outside of the building. You can just see all of the blood from his feet just smearing across the glass. And it's appropriate because he's putting pressure on those things. I mean, it is completely appropriate for all that blood.
It's that attention to detail in everything. Like we said, the continuity of his wounds almost never fails.
Yeah, after he gets fired through the shoulder, you can see blood streaming down it for the rest of the movie.
That's, at least for the first 3 Die Hard movies, that is a common thing. How bloody can his clothes get by the end of the movie? How... To say that, to talk about special effects and the way that things look, I think that's a good segue into that. So, I noticed a trend in watching a hell of a lot of movies that right around the time period of 1989, 1990, when computer graphics started getting used a lot because they were cheaper. This movie really, $28 million budget, huge for 1988, really kind of spells that last end of the real brilliance of full practical effects work. You can go as far as the helicopters actually being flown down the streets in between the buildings. Looks fucking gorgeous. Terminator 2 did that too. You know what I mean? This obviously isn't a digital effect, but this movie, the model work. The fact that when someone falls out of a building, even the blue screen shot of them falling out of the building, it actually looks fucking good. I think this movie, if I'm not mistaken from watching a special effects reel show, may have, at the time, had the longest practical fall for Hans Gruber's death.
It might be.
Because, the camera... Because from what I remember, he's just hitting that bag right out of frame. That's a 70, 80-story fall.
Yeah, watching it again, I was kind of surprised.
It's a big
it's an airbag gag.
It's an airbag gag, 100%.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
When they drop someone off a building, they don't do it much anymore because people die.
Insurance.
Right? They drop them into a giant inflated bag, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And this one with the stuntman, because it wasn't... he might have been roped and bagged. But either way, it's a great friggin' fall.
It used to be they'd be like on a descender rig or the Dar Robinson thing where they'd be on a bungee cord, but it really doesn't look like from the way he's falling.
It's such a fantastic... even the helicopter... McTiernan was... look, Cliffhanger has another beautiful... That was Harlan, but Cliffhanger has another beautiful helicopter crash. But in broad daylight, too. But... just so many things I noticed in this movie that looked great.
They still look great. The effects mostly, for the most part,
hold up.
And
it made me think, and I put it down on. I'll say it now just because it was more of a joke recommendation, so I won't do it. But it reminded me of how terrible the Joker's fall in Batman 1989 looks.
Oh,
which came out a year after this.
That face on as he's
and
falling.
It just reminded me of every movie. I don't remember a movie after this, for at least the good 5 years after this that I've seen, that had a fall that looked as good as his slow motion fall out that window.
Part of it was, normally when they do a fall like that, they'd have the actor on wires in front of a blue screen. He'd just kind of wave his arms and make it look like he's falling. For that one, they covered an airbag with blue material. Got Alan Rickman about 20 feet up.
I know.
And said...
That's why it looks so good.
1, 2, 3, but actually dropped him on 2, so he'd have that shocked look on his face as he went down.
It was definitely shock, panic, and yeah, you're right. It's hard.
And he stayed in character, which is very great.
Hard to act shock and panic in your life is just done. It's really hard to act that way.
To tie him back into what I've said about, just a good old-fashioned action movie, this one is so friggin' inventive. And it feels fresh watching. I don't look at this... Yeah, we joke about things that are silly, that Bruce Willis does, and the stereotypes and things, but you look at it and laugh and respect the hell out of it. Because this movie's trying. It's trying to be a good movie.
It just teeters on the edge of being ridiculous, too. His roof escape using the fire hose.
Oh, but it's so badass.
It's great. And he
still has to frickin' put his feet, like she said, against the window and kick through to get it. It's not like that perfect.
And after that, he's still nearly killed by the whole fire hose assembly falling off the building and nearly dragging him out the window.
Their Wile E. Coyote gag. Yeah. He even has that look in the camera like, uh-oh.
As this series would go on, those bits would get more and more ridiculous. But here, they're still, for the most part, pretty plausible. I also love the effect of his chair bomb down the elevator shaft. They actually built a miniature of the building in black glass and blew that up and then just composited over an identical angle of the real building.
Yeah, Robert Rodriguez, he does those 15-minute acting and filmmaking schools. And one of the best ones he ever said is, he goes, if most of the stuff in your shot can be real, the effect is going to look better.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what people are forgetting now. When he has to shoot somebody in the head, he'll have a dummy, but he'll have the actor act the thing too and composite them together so only that one bit and it looks so fucking good. And it's an old 1980s trick. And they don't use it anymore because it takes too long.
Oh, but it looks better.
It's why, even though I love them, the Hobbit movies look cheaper than the Lord of the Rings films in some respects, because they didn't put as much time and effort into making the models and makeup and everything.
And building full sets. So
right.
Everything is digital.
Which, we got to churn them out quicker. I get it. I still love the movies, but...
And you'd never have the rooftop scene like this where he jumps off, and you can see, at least in some shots, it's actually a stuntman hanging off that building.
That's why Mission Impossible 4 looked so fucking great.
Yeah, because they actually went to the trouble of really doing that.
Was that the one where they put Tom Cruise in the top of the building and it was actually Tom Cruise?
He did every stunt. Every stunt you see on screen, he did. But that movie, heck, I hadn't seen, because the original Mission Impossible, there's one case in point. When was that movie made? 1996?
96, yeah.
That movie looks like dog shit in comparison to this. I still love the movie, but it's badly cheap, mixed with we're not quite good at doing the blue screen yet and all that.
And the CGI effects.
There's the helicopter in the tunnel sequence, right? The explosion in this, where the guys are on the helicopter and the building explodes, you could fool me that they didn't actually just fucking film that right there. Maybe they did just put the guys in the helicopter and film an explosion and then blue screen everything else. And I don't know, but it looks like it's happening in front of you.
And explosions, in particular, a lot of it was miniatures, and that's tough to scale down and make it look the right size. You usually have to build very large-scale miniatures.
That's why
they needed an assistant builder.
Like you were saying earlier, I wish McTiernan would come back in a big way, because he used to be the king of this shit.
Another great, kind of slides into special effects thing. Since Bruce Willis is running around in bare feet for most of the movie, I don't know if you notice, every once in a while it looks like he has hobbit feet, that his feet are abnormally large, because they actually made him fleshy boots to put right over his bare feet. So, when he's running upstairs, when he's running over locations that might actually cut his feet, he wouldn't get hurt. But there's a couple shots you can see.
I wondered if they had anything actually on his feet.
Yeah, any wide shot where it's not close enough to tell, he's wearing them. But there are a couple close-ups where you can see it. When it stops that fan to escape and jumps through it, you can see it for a couple shots there.
I wonder if there's any trivia on all of these movies on how much of the blood is actually Bruce Willis's, because I can only imagine he gets pretty fucked up filming these movies.
I think we'd have to at some point. I mean, granted, he uses a lot of stuntmen, and there's a couple scenes where you can actually see their face on camera.
Yeah.
But
also, 74 cents for gas.
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk about
Rub
the
it in, movie. Rub it the fuck in.
The technology.
Oh, you mean like their portable TV that they're watching stuff
No,
on?
I like the touch screen.
The
touch screen with like the Nintendo-looking graphics.
Yep.
And the style, the glasses, and the clothes. My God, what we thinking? The hair. Oh my Lord.
Like it was all CB radios rather than cell phones.
Yeah, right.
I also want to talk thematically about how people's morality are kind of defined by their class and their kind of attempt to move out of that class. So, okay, like as we said, McClane's definitely like the working class guy. He befriends those on kind of the lower rungs of the hierarchy. Like with Argyle, I mean, he gets picked up in a limo, doesn't sit in the back. He sits in the front seat with him and talks to him just as an equal, not as this driver, put the window down kind of thing. And I think that's part of his fight with Holly is this very sudden shift in their class status. He's still this blue-collar cop, and now she's made a big jump into the executive level, and he can't really handle that.
They figure a married woman's got...
You are a married woman, Holly. You're married to me.
We're going to have this conversation again. We did this in July.
We never finished this conversation in July.
I had to take it.
Right. No matter what the consequences, no matter what it did to our marriage,
you had to take this opportunity. It didn't do anything to our marriage except maybe change your idea of what our marriage should be.
I don't think you have a clue as to what my idea of our marriage should be.
I know exactly what your idea of our marriage should be.
Part of the movie is him becoming comfortable with that change in
and also seeing her at work. She kind of took leadership over those people. It's kind of like, oh, wait a minute, no. She's not selling out and moving up to the bumbling idiot class of everyone else in the movie. She's getting this job because she's working for it.
Yeah, we even see in her first shot is this party, and she's the only one working. She's still going through her files, walking along, not stopping at all. It would have been very easy for them to just villainize all the rich people in the movie, but they don't.
Or even villainize her. A lot of movies would villainize her.
Or make it out that...
I'm sorry, John, New York's much better than L.A., or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise you might interpret that last line where she takes his name back as that she's going to quit and go back to being a housewife, but that's not really the case, and we certainly see that in the sequel where she's still working for Nakatomi. But also Takagi himself, the fact that he seems to be a decent boss and a good guy. While on the other side, you have Gruber, who, while he decries, the company's legacy of greed, that's exactly what he's in this for. And I didn't really realize until now how much of Gruber is about money. When he's trying to get back at McClane, he says he's an orphan from a bankrupt culture. That's the insult that he throws at him. He's immediately admiring Takagi's suits, Everything, the materialistic kind of level of things is what he operates on. He read about his project in Forbes. Of course, this is the guy who's going to read Forbes. And on the same line, you have Ellis. I mean, just look at that character. As soon as McClane shows up in the office, what's the first thing he's like? Show him the watch.
I like that guy's just out in the open doing cocaine.
Late 80s.
Yeah, doing cocaine in the middle of the office out in the open and no one could give two shits. So, yeah, whatever.
Barely makes an effort to hide it. I was just looking for a phone, yeah. Yeah, that's it. But I mean, he thinks that, the way to Holly is to impress her by giving her a nice gift like this. Or his idea of their Christmas together with some mulled wine and everything.
He missed the best opportunity to use her name as a Christmas pun. In the very beginning, when we're introducing over and over that it's Christmas.
The beginning of the movie?
Well, it's very, very bad in the beginning of the movie. Like 5 minutes into the movie, Holly's saying that it's Christmas Eve. And she's talking about what she's doing for Christmas or what she thinks Christmas is all about. And he says something really creepy about fireplace and wine. And he misses the opportunity to say, well, my part of Christmas is Holly. And it's like completely missed opportunity.
I'm kind of glad they didn't go that.
I wish they had.
Holly.
I'm always going to go for the pun.
I'd like some Holly on my front door tonight.
That sounds a little more James Bond movie-like. But going back to the watch, I love the fact that this is the thing that almost drags her to her death. That he has to get it off and let go of it to survive. Here's another thing I want to throw at you as an idea. Since the heist is kind of presented in a comedic way, in a way that we're supposed to almost be able to enjoy it, and this is the 80s when Japanese companies were really getting known for coming into America and buying up a lot of our companies, could the heist scene and just the general plot of the movie, German terrorists coming in and taking over this Japanese corporation and an American having to come in to save the day, almost be like a cathartic fantasy for American audiences who might be concerned about
Retribution for World War II?
Well, I was thinking more just the economic situation there where this threat of, these Japanese companies are coming over and buying up everything.
Right.
And now we can spend 2 hours watching one kind of get taken down.
There's another movie that does that. I don't know if you remember it, Gung Ho.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
Right, yeah.
And I think it was around the same time.
Although that one seemed to have a little bit more of a message of cooperation, working together, where...
But it's very obvious that, we've got the American guys who are like, oh, I'm American, and then the Japanese company comes in, they want to change everything, and I think the cooperation comes forth between two characters getting it all together more than...
Which is very similar to the Bruce Willis and Carl Winslow, their characters.
Yeah.
It's the Japanese guy that's less concerned with all the ideals and the structure and everything and sees... Gung Ho's an awesome movie. He sees the ideals of the American side and the hard work there being important too. And they come to a mutual understanding. Yeah, but it's not the two cultures coming to a mutual understanding.
Right.
It's just those two guys.
The two guys. And they rope the rest of the factory in, but...
And then, unfortunately, the auto industry went to shit.
Yeah.
But they were done around the same time, so Japanese takeovers of companies is sort of an 80s theme.
Yeah. It is, definitely. That's why it feels like they put this in here so audiences could subtly enjoy that, but we'll make the bad guys German terrorists, so we don't have to feel bad about it. But we'll even take a step back from that, because even the terrorist group is like, no, these guys aren't with us.
Yeah.
We're not part of that. It's a weird point, but action movies in this era, there's going to be nudity in the movie. I mean, that's kind of a given.
There was just a quick boob shot.
Well, I kind of like how every time they use nudity in this movie, it's to further a plot point or do something. Like, the couple that's making out in the office, that's the chance for McClane to get away before Vigo the Peripathian, finds him in the office.
And also to let us know that they are indeed in California.
The centerfold that he finds hanging up, it's not just there randomly. That's kind of a bit of geography, so we know where he is when he circles around again later.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or that moment where he looks out the window and sees the girl in her underwear pacing by the window with the phone and realizes the phones are only cut off in the building, not all over LA.
I missed her in the intro. The thing I saw was the calendar.
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, if you have to put it in a movie, I kind of like the effort to at least tie it into the plot somehow. A couple other bits of trivia details. The directory that Gruber gets his alias from, you can see it's listed with a whole bunch of the production crew, like production designer Jackson Nagovia, Al Desario, the effects guy. The teddy bear that McClane has on the plane, McTiernan would use another teddy bear in The Hunt for Red October, also on a plane. It might be the same one. I can't remember.
It probably is. We should check that.
For all the scenes where they're firing guns, they used special blanks that were super loaded to make really big muzzle flares. But meant they had to, A, specially modify the guns, and meant we'd have more scenes of Rickman and other actors flinching as they fired them because the things were too damn powerful. Okay, let's talk about the influence Die Hard had on movies, which is gonna be pretty big. This was the ultimate high-concept plot. One guy trapped in a location versus a whole bunch of bad guys, specifically terrorists. I mean, you've got Toy Soldiers would take this plot, Under Siege, Passenger 57, Sudden Death,
The Raid Redemption,
Speed 1, Speed 2,
Rock,
Cliffhanger, Broken Arrow, It did 7 seasons worth of, or actually I think 8 seasons worth of 24.
Yep.
Air Force One. Even internationally, Hard Boiled, the end of that movie is pretty much Die Hard in a hospital. And yet, most of them don't approach the same level of quality as this one.
Right. Some of them come very close, but this one is...
They kind of emphasize big stunts and things blowing up, and again, action heroes who can shake off a bullet or punch to the face without even flinching. I mean, Seagal in Under Siege, it looks like he could just go out for a coffee while people are firing.
Right. Seagal never looks winded. Or
no.
If the writing isn't there, it doesn't matter how much money they throw at it for explosions.
Right. That's what this movie really gets. Is its characters are written well. The technical people are showing up and not overstaging the actors.
The characters are smart. I mean, they're not just firing and blowing things up. They're outsmarting each other and improvising.
And there's a geography to all of it. If you're going to have a siege in a building, the building better be fucking interesting.
Great production design, too. The way they designed the interior of the building to kind of match the outside of the Fox Plaza building they filmed in. They did a really good job. Or the way that the Nakatomi logo looks like a samurai helmet.
Yes.
It also, when it was on the floor, when the symbol was on the floor, it pointed toward the vault.
Oh, I had noticed
that. That was great. Because at first I didn't realize it was the symbol for the company. I just thought there was this giant arrow on the floor for no reason. What you're looking for is right over here.
The whole scene is like Gruber just focused on the vault to the point he doesn't even hear Theo.
And the green exit signs.
Oh, that's what you were talking
about. Which I think
that.
There's a reason for it. It's green when it's like when you're not on the ground floor. Speaking of that, I was thinking about something while I was watching this, how the progression of him through the movie, he goes to the nice, opulence of the building and the party, and then goes through like kind of the broken down bits of the building where you're kind of making your way through a more deconstructed. And then when the place is blowing up and he actually has to hide in that jungle setting, it almost has like a war movie, like a Vietnam kind of thing going on. The way that that's filmed and staged, it's like he very could well be in the middle of a jungle right now and have to hide under the water to escape the explosion.
I remember you mentioned that. It's
like almost like a tribal.
It felt so much like Platoon in that moment.
It's so weird and like cool all at the same time that like that one, like the opulence of that room, like this is really overdone, actually kind of saved him in that one moment. You know what I mean?
But also that idea that this beautiful, civilized, sophisticated area, now it's back to the law of the jungle.
And right after that, I love the elevator. Ding! And then it blows up. It's really fucking cool.
And especially coming after his comment, I hate this place, and it looks like the place hates him just as much.
Yeah.
I just noticed the color palette. It's pretty interesting. There's mostly blacks, whites, grays, maybe a tan here or there, but it's very, very neutral. And there's the one or two people who will have a splash of red, a splash of blue, a splash of green. Yellow is only used if it's an electronic instrument, if it's a wire.
You're right, almost every wire in the fucking movie was yellow, too.
Interesting, that's true.
So yellow is used very sparingly. And the only weird pastelish color, because it was almost like a salmon, but it was a pale salmon, was Holly's shirt.
But it also helps you pick her out in a crowd, like in that opening shot.
Exactly.
Yeah, your eye is drawn to her.
You're seeing a sea of blacks, whites, some reds, but when you're coming down to a really mixed color, you've got her.
Oh, one little point, and it kept bugging me through the whole movie. The characters are constantly interrupting each other on CBs. You can't do that.
Oh, yeah.
Every time, because while they have the mic key, there's no way the other thing is going to come
Gruber does it all the time.
Gruber does it. McClane's constantly interrupting, what's his name, Robinson on the radio. It's just, they don't work that way. You can't do CB communications that way.
We didn't mention the fact that he went from wearing a white tank top to obviously a green one that's supposed to be a white one dirty.
Oh, yeah. And it's perfectly, the dirt is perfectly smeared on it, even on the straps.
So, should we talk about why this is a Christmas movie?
Oh, yeah, we never talked about that.
Besides taking place on Christmas Eve, a Christmas party, having Christmas
Merry
decorations
Christmas spray paint
everywhere.
I love that every hallway McClane goes down, even to the floors where there's work being done, there's mentions of Christmas.
Yeah.
I think there were light up Santas on one of those floors.
It's like there's graffiti spray painted on near the
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.
Goes up there. Yeah, they want
So
you to
why
know
was
it's
this a
Christmas.
Christmas movie?
Well, there's also the theme of money being a sin or a problem, and this is a heist simply for money.
Correct.
And they are the bad guys.
The whole thing about greed.
Yep, the goodwill toward men. You've got the character, the cocaine snorting character, Ellis.
Who was letting it snow throughout the entire movie.
He is letting it snow, but he's also he's only looking out for himself, so there is no goodwill toward man there. On the other hand, McClane has an abundance of that, where he would rather just mind his own business, but he wants to save the day. It's very Christmas spirit of him.
And the theme of family being split apart,
and
coming
reconciliation,
back together,
very big
traveling to see family.
Yep.
Is, I mean, right in that, all of that's there. How busy the airport was.
Coming up with your family in front of a nice warm fire.
Right. That happens to be a building.
And if you want to go for a big theme that is really reaching, but I love those, the idea of the building and the people who work there at the company, they are a greater family, and then you have the terrorists and Bruce Willis coming in, and they sort of act like family members you never see in that you don't want them there. It's awful that they're there. They're causing problems.
They leave their stuff all over the place, including C4 and dead bodies.
And then you have the interfamily
They ruin
stuff.
Christmas.
And then you have the interfamily stuff with the terrorists.
Yes, the brothers.
You know, you're right. So that they play on that family aspect a lot.
And they want their toys. In this case, several $100 million worth of bearer bonds.
Right. And then there's the random stuff in that involves. He mentioned the Degas painting.
Yeah,
there were some other like vases.
There's samurai armor. There's
like some vases or statues or something.
There's some kind of it looked like Japanese temple statues and a Degas and the bonds, and it was a vault that did not make any sense for anything but a bank. Only a bank vault would have that combination of items, or maybe a museum, I don't know, but it didn't make sense for this company.
I don't know, unless it's something about their physical assets or something that they decided to stick them in there.
Yeah.
It's a little weird, but it makes for
decorations.
Maybe it was just all of the Christmas presents that Takagi bought for his family and had delivered
that
to
day
work.
was for Holly.
Well, you know, when we
Those
get
assholes having their stuff delivered to work.
When we get a Degas, I'm going to put it right in the vault because I never want to look at it.
Right, why would you buy art and not want to, I'm right?
It's a pity if McClane had gotten that samurai armor, he might have used that in his over the course of the night. That could have come in handy. Alright, shall we move on to favorite scene?
Well, mine are more snippets than full scenes, but my favorite full scene was when he's doing the shoot-off, and he's on the table shooting him, and he's crawling under it.
No more table! Where are you going, pal? Next time you have a chance to kill someone, don't hesitate.
Thanks for the advice.
I just thought that was really cool. And then, just like the ones where he does silly things, like you open the elevator and he left the dead guy with the Santa hat with the, I have the machine gun, ho ho ho.
It's such an insane calling card at that moment. That's how he's going
I
to
never even
announce
thought
his
of it as a
presence.
calling card. That's a good point. And then, like you said earlier, he's got the tick marks for all the bad guys he's counting, and he's writing their names as he kills them. When he's trying to get talking over the radio to try to get 911, and no one believes him, and she's like, "This is an emergency line." He's like, "No shit, I'm not ordering a pizza." Like, just how aggravated he gets, but he still has a bit of a sense of humor.
Good.
Well, my favorite scene has to be Alan Rickman's death. Hans Gruber just falling, because it was very real. I had a visceral reaction. I just like this pit in my stomach. It was just very well done, very real, and appropriate for the movie by the end. Even though if you're not sure why you want this guy dead, you want him dead, and you want him dead fast.
I always forget that little moment of suspense where it's not just that he's pulling her out the window, he's raising his gun up about to fire it.
Yeah.
The choice of slow motion there was fucking perfect.
And the music score.
Yeah.
Which
the score of this movie is great. We didn't mention it.
Yeah,
we
I should just talk about that. The fact that they, how they weave Ode to Joy throughout the movie, and I didn't even notice until you pointed out. Which song was it?
There were a couple of them, actually. I wrote them down in the score. Winter Wonderland, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, and Jingle Bells.
Jingle Bells.
Oh, okay.
I think it was Jingle Bells.
Jingle Bells was during all the action.
Yeah, it was like...
Yeah.
It was just the three first notes of Jingle Bell just drawn out. and then it went back into the score.
And even the sound of Jingle Bells worked into the music here. And
Yes.
there. Yeah, the music score was by Michael Kamen, who would also do the music for the Lethal Weapon series, so it has that same kind of sound to
Lethal
it.
Weapon's
And
so much fun.
The first X-Men movies, yeah, I love his music.
My favorite scene, because you spoke of one of mine, which is good, Alan Rickman's death, was actually Ellis's Death Wish sequence. When he basically thinks he is just the fucking bee's knees, and he is going to come in there, I got this. And what's great is how layered it is. The movie makes you think that he's going to be the sleazeball that's going to give up Bruce Willis's wife to get himself out of it. But no, he takes it one step further and tries to make it... One, to twist that knife a little further on Bruce Willis's back. Oh yeah, we're buddies, and you're going to have to play buddy with me because it's the only way that we're going to frickin' save the day.
Hey, John, I think you could get with the program a little, huh? The police are here now. It's their problem. Now tell these guys where the detonators are so no one else gets hurt. You know, I'm putting my life on the line for you, pal.
Ellis, listen to me very carefully.
John.
Shut up, Ellis. Just shut your mouth. Put Hans back on the line.
Hans, this shithead does not know what kind of man you are, but I do. Listen to me.
Good. Then you'll give us what we want and save your friend's life. You're not part of this equation. It's time you realized that.
Hey, what am I, a method actor, Hans?
Babe, put away the gun. This is radio, not television. Hans, this asshole is not my friend. I just met him tonight. I don't know him. Jesus Christ, Ellis, these people are going to kill you. Tell them you don't know me.
Even though the movie never gives you a wink, you can tell, he genuinely is trying to save the guy, but it's kind of helping his situation a little bit, right? And it just, the smugness, the entire exchange between him and Alan Rickman is just perfect, and then him finally getting it. It's just a great sequence. I had a couple of little snippets of just really cool brilliance in the movie. When he's in the ducts, and the guy shoots the ducts full of bullets, you had mentioned how cool it was that the guy actually went and was pushing on the vent with the gun to see if there was a body still dead in there. But the camera does a really cool thing, and I don't know if it's just the smoke from the light coming below, but there's actually a smoky bullet hole. Like it had just happened right in front of Bruce Willis's face.
You can even hear it sizzling.
It's so cool. And I really like the bit with Johnson & Johnson in the helicopter, where the full, complete idiocy of even the FBI is shown, where he goes, just like Vietnam, huh? Dude, I was in junior high, you dickhead. That whole exchange is just perfect.
That brings to mind another interesting kind of parallel, that when McClane arrives at the building and Argyle talks about, you'll walk in arm in arm when the sun set, everything will work out great. And he's like, I can live with that. And then the line's echoed by Johnson talking about, I think we'll lose about 25% of the hostages. I can live with that. It's creepy to hear that line repeated in a really different, chilling context. For my favorite, it has to be the face-off between Gruber and McClane, where Gruber is pretending to be Bill Clay. Just because it's a scene of these two characters constantly trying to outsmart each other over the course of the scene. We think at first that Gruber has McClane fooled, and then we see that McClane is kind of putting it together, gives him what we think is a loaded gun. Gruber's pointing the gun at McClane, telling him to put down the gun. And McClane just keeps walking forward, and you can see Gruber's kind of freaking out, like, why is this guy walking right into a loaded gun? What is with this guy?
Well. Hans.
Put it down now.
It's pretty tricky with that accent. You gotta be on fucking TV with that accent. But what do you want with the detonators, Hans? I already used all the explosives. Or did I?
I'm going to count to 3.
Yeah. Like you did with Takagi. Oops. No bullets. You think I'm fucking stupid, Hans?
You're saying?
Gruber is already called in backup and outsmarted him and ambushed him. And then during the next fight, he remembers that he's barefoot and goes, all right, shoot the glass. He knows that he can push McClane's weakness. That idea of these two characters constantly matching wits just as they're shooting each other is brilliant. Do we want to move on to our recommendations? So you want to go first?
Sure. I've written down a few. I didn't want to go into a whole bunch mentioning Jan de Bont, who was the cinematographer for this, so I'll just say...
gave us a whole bunch of lens flares.
Right, a whole bunch of lens flares, but the movie looked freaking gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
My favorite of his movies is actually Speed, so that was going to be a recommendation. It's nowhere near as great as, but very much as fun as this movie in a lot of what it tried to do.
Yeah, I think so.
Die Hard 3, which is my favorite Die Hard with a Vengeance, is actually way sillier than this, but I just love it to fucking pieces. The whole Simon Says shtick and Chester A. Arthur Elementary, all of that.
And interesting to see how McTiernan completely changed his style for that one. Lots of handheld camera work. It's a lot less smooth on purpose.
No, you haven't seen it. It's really good, though.
The Simon Says thing sounds familiar, though.
Yes. Galaxy Quest, because of Alan Rickman and Alan Rickman alone. We talked about, seeing him in kind of this villain kind of a role, and just to see him play the goofy comic relief, but still with a lot of heart and a lot going on in that movie. Hostage, which is my favorite of the non-Die Hard Bruce Willis movies. I love the hell out of that flick, and I don't think a whole lot of people have seen it. So
no, it was really good. Ben Foster's a great bad guy.
And I was trying to remember what movie, and it finally clicked at the end. But the Joker's in The Dark Knight, his assault on Wayne's new manor there, is just like this movie. And then the bits at the end in that building that they're building. It's two bits that are just filmed almost identically to this and feel just like it.
And it has that same
thread of people getting caught making out in a room, all that.
And that last assault has that same thread of the hero having to step in because the cops are about to make a huge mistake and completely jeopardize the situation.
So, I mean, I could, you could recommend The Dark Knight anytime on anything, but I think in particular with watching with this, there's a lot of similarities there. So, and Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah, that sense of heroes against absolutely insane odds. Sarah?
Like I said, the rest of the Die Hard movies, I was thinking like the Bourne Supremacy movies, maybe the Lethal Weapons. The Lethal Weapon movies have always kind of seemed to be the parallel to me.
They're from the same producer, and they kind of come from that same
I always would get those mixed up.
I would recommend, if you're a Bruce Willis fan, and I would go for The Fifth Element.
Oh, yeah.
It is absolutely the same character, but in space, and he's the cabbie instead of a cop. If you're not a Bruce Willis fan, go for The Thomas Crown Affair. It has more of it's a heist movie. It's by the same director, John McTiernan. It's an overall just well-acted, well-written film.
Well, one movie I almost wonder might be an influence on this is The Towering Inferno. There you go. Giant building again on fire and huge cast having to deal with a sort of disaster. I'd also go with, this is one that people seem to have kind of forgotten about, The Negotiator with Kevin Spacey and Samuel L. Jackson.
That's a great friggin'
Another great standoff. Two other ones. The communication between Gruber and McClane reminds me of Roller Coaster with Timothy Bottoms and George Segal. The way those two characters have this back and forth over CB through the entire movie. Again, two characters trying to outsmart each other constantly, coming up with plans, and when those don't work, coming up with new ones. And the last one I'd say is Black Sunday with Robert Shaw. As it's a little bit more of a straightforward terrorist movie about a truly ridiculous terrorist plot that they don't even really reveal what it is until the movie hits the climax. But Shaw is great in it, and it has some really loopy, insane stunts toward the end.
I was going to say, it's not a movie, it's a show. But Kevin Bacon's character in The Following reminds me a lot of John McClane. The one cop that takes it on himself to save the day.
I haven't seen The Following.
I still have to see that show.
It's really good.
I know it's like a season or two, or I don't know, because they're doing the seasons weird, but it's like a season. It's a season or two in, but it's definitely, I feel like
it's one of those
like this.
Kind of like we said here with this movie. If everything didn't come together, things would go to ridiculous. The writing of The Following is completely bonkers ridiculous. Oh yeah, been there, done that. I know exactly where this is going, kind of stuff. But the people showed up to play their roles, and they just keep it grounded and like, I can watch this. This is good.
One other thing you were talking about with TV shows, though, I always had an image of a bar somewhere with John McClane sitting down at a table with Jack Bauer.
Yes.
And the two of them just like, you think you had a bad day? Listen to my day when this happened and this happened. Okay, anything else that we have to say about Die Hard? Or?
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
All right, I think that pretty much says it all. That ends our conversation, but not the discussion. If you'd like to have your say about Die Hard or feel that we missed something, check out the comments section for this episode on cinemaspection.blogspot.com and start talking. Email your comments, complaints, questions, and suggestions to cinemaspection@gmail.com. You can also like our Facebook page, and if you're on iTunes and like what you hear, please subscribe to us, and if you have a moment to spare, leave us a review. We appreciate any feedback you can offer. We'll be back to discuss another movie next time. Until then, remember to keep watching closely. There's more to a movie than just what's on the screen. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.